Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the story behind Don't Die For Me, Argentina. So, I'm super excited because 2 days to go. Saturday, get your copy of the novel. And this is my best one yet. I think that every time, but it is. And I'm really excited for you to read it. It does feel to me like a sort of a bit of a reinvention of the modern Western. And I've said before that all of my books are a slightly different subgenre of the crime fiction one. And this one is much more an action-adventure style than a police procedural or closed circuit mystery like Hello or Goodbye. So, it's very different, and it leans into... This one is very much a week in my life, and Penny is living what I did in 2024. So I'm going to reiterate again with a little extract from the start about the whole off-grid thing, because we say it, none of us are ever disconnected anymore. We've always got our phone, computer, our ring doorbells, our cars. It's all there, all the time. And it's very hard. We even set ourselves up for a social media detox where it's a month off of that. Because it's just such a big constant in all of our lives. And it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I went off grid for a week, but you don't actually really comprehend it until you look down at your phone and there are no bars, there is no signal, there is nothing you can do. And also when you get to the point that there's no charge left on your battery pack to charge your phone. We'll go into that a little bit later in the season, but I'm start with this extract. Penny dropped those thoughts from her mind. That was work, and now she was on holiday. She had a different kind of work ahead of her, driving cattle. But that was a dream, not a job. Part of that she was excited about, looking forward to, was the step back in time with no technology, no phone signal, no electricity. She could literally switch off from it, all of it. There was a little bit of her that was nervous, as if the rest of the world would move on and leave her behind while she was out of touch. When she thought about it, all the time spent online and how the internet and technology was working its way into everybody's lives, this was the real life. This was reality. She was looking forward to, if only for a week, being unreachable and being unable to contact anyone. Well, almost. I obviously used that as a tool in writing this book very much, because, and that's why I chose Penny to be the one that went on it. because she is the tech analyst. She is the one always plugged in, always switched on, always on her device. And it's almost an extension of her, because that's what the team rely on her for too, to be constantly connected and pulling them information from everywhere so that she can help them in crime fighting. But you've got none of that. You've got no connection to the cloud. You've got nothing. And when I think back, I was just excited. It was this dream, and James was the same. It was this dream. It was brilliant that me and James connected so well over the shared dream, purely because we had to spend the week together. First of all, we had a long flight. I'll tell you, I'll put this in. In fact, I'm going to give you a couple of little anecdotes with James. One was I'd put out to the universe the night before we flew out for me to get an upgrade, and that was it. I'd just done that. And then we arrived at the airport, we met. That was the first time we met. We talked on the phone, but that was the first time we'd met. And we went to the bar, and I thought I may as well start with Malbec. That's what I was going to be drinking in Argentina. So I had a Malbec, he had a beer, and we were just proper gelling, and then we went to do our passports and go through to board the plane. And he scanned mine and he said, "You've got an upgrade." Yes. And I said, can my friend come too? And he said, "No, sorry." It wasn't first class. It was just to above standard class sort of thing. But that was quite funny. And we were only a little bit away. He came down to see me and I went up to see him. And it probably wasn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if we hadn't got on. But then we did actually share a room in Goodwin and tents on the actual trip, because we both had partners. We were both. It was two friends. There was just two people who just met, sharing a dream, and we're still friends now. Obviously, after 2 years, we don't talk as often, but we have met up a couple of times since we've been back. But you don't think until you're on your way that I am going to be spending a week in the middle of nowhere with no distractions. Remember, no TV, no phone, no one else to chat to, with these people I've never met before. And on our trip, nobody was the same nationality except for me and James. We had people from Canada, from the US, from the Netherlands, from Italy, from France, from Argentina. It was great. But lots of things go through your mind, and they go through Penny's too. And I really wanted to capture all of that. I use it as a tool in the book as a way to introduce characters and to help you feel the isolation. As I do with all of these, it's based on my real experience, but twisted, blown up, taken out of context in order to give you the thrills, the interest, etc. So I'm going to read the extract from when Penny gets in the minibus. So when we went, we flew straight down to Nequin and we stayed in Nequin overnight, and there was me and James and three others, and we had a day in Nequin before everybody else turned up, and we had a great time. We went out, they went swimming, I couldn't because of my knee,
and we went out in the evening. And obviously, when you go out and you have a few drinks, you build up a little bit of a rapport. And I was so glad because I sometimes find social interactions with people I don't know, particularly people I don't know who I perceive as being more experienced than me, i.e. they were all better riders because it had been so long since I'd ridden, whereas they seem to ride all the time and they've got horses and whatever. Um, I can find them quite difficult. So I was really pleased that I was in from the start so that any of that banter that gets built up and relationships that get built before you're actually on the adventure and you're all together, I was in on. So then I didn't feel excluded or that I was missing out on anything, etc. But what I did in the book was make Penny join after that so that I could use how I would have felt if I hadn't been in it from the start for her to just lift the tension a bit. Penny didn't like him. The moment she got into the minibus outside the airport in Nequin, slid along the bench seat and introduced herself to the girl she was sat next to, Anique, she didn't like him. He was arrogant, taking the mickey out of her English accent. She wasn't so keen on his German one, but she bit her tongue. She had a week with this group of people. It wasn't worth getting upset with them this early in the game. They'd arrived direct from the flight and were the first to be picked up. Anique, Thomas the German, and Penny. The rest of the group on this adventure had come in the day before and stayed overnight at a hotel in Nequin. So it was now 2 hotel stops to pick them all up. As she didn't like Thomas, she'd better start making friends with Anique, as all of the rest of them would have already made alliances. Penny felt like she was in a game of traitors. Anique came from the Netherlands, speaking perfect English, an easy, faithful friend. The 3 of them had talked animatedly as the minibus driver drove them into Nequin. There had been a WhatsApp group that they'd all been added to, but everybody had been too busy with their real lives to start communicating or making friends before they left. It had been tricky to work out some of the nationalities as well, but it looked like there wasn't anybody from the same country. The starting point, Penny thought, would be the repetitive question they would all ask of each other first, which was what had brought them here. And I was the same. I thought that, that's always the starting point with a group of new people. Why are you here? Sort of thing. Thomas had asked it, his blue eyes shining beneath a mop of poorly trimmed blonde hair. Penny, the ever-polite English person, dutifully waited for Anique to answer first. When I was young, we lived in the UK. She nodded to Penny and smiled. I had riding lessons and fell in love with horses. My dream is to ride in the wilderness and sleep under the stars. Penny sat upright, turned towards Anique, then back in her seat. She closed her eyes, tipping her head back as if she could drown out the sound of the motor and feel the sun on her face and the warm air floating over the mountain, and dreamily said, Me too. That's exactly why I'm here. Anique and Penny found each other's hands and squeezed with excitement to a shared dream. The dream was momentarily shattered by the harsh practical voice of Thomas. But the kit list says warm sleeping bag, a coat. I don't think you'll be sleeping under the stars, but in tents, and that is going to get very uncomfortable, he laughed, when you girls start to smell a bit. And he laughed some more. Penny sat up and twisted round. Anique opened her eyes and rolled them at Penny. Thomas was already starting to remind Penny of Steve Payne, and not in a good way. If you haven't read any of my other books, Steve Payne is the negative person that you always have in a team, in Goodwin's team in the UK. So that's Lethal Leith Hill, Connecting Trains, and the book after this one, which will be Die Trying. What are you here for then, if not for the same or very similar? She asked him. As if he never expected the question to be asked back at him, he shrugged his shoulders. I too want to see the wilderness. No telephone masts, no wires across the sky, no cars. Only for a short time, you understand. I have a bad leg and I'm not able to hike, and it would be completely defeat the object to do so in a car. So I came across the idea of doing it on horseback, like in the olden days in Germany before the car. Then there's a whole conversation between him and Penny about the car and horses and stuff. But that is the start of getting to know people. And we, on our group, as the lady who was taking us from Hooves Around the World, Hooves Around the World was the company that I did it with. And if any of this interests you, Hooves Around the World, they do horse adventure holidays all over the world, and they're great. And Steen was doing ours, and she said that there was never any problem. Everybody always gelled, and everybody always got on, and everyone always had a fantastic time on this trip. And we did. I mean, it was a childhood dream, and I'm going to get emotional now. I don't think I could go back and do it again, because it was everything and more for what I wanted. And I feel very privileged to have done it and been able to now use it in the book. But in the book, the relationships aren't so good. And whilst, the trip is based very much on what I did, James isn't in the book, Steen isn't in the book, nobody else that was on the journey is in the book in any way, shape, or form. They are all completely made up characters that give me the backgrounds that I need to be able to put together the storyline. But as always, using my experience is what I've put into the book. So that situation. And then they go on to, there is an in-joke. They go on and they pick people up from the airport, from the hotels they stayed overnight. So that I was one of the pickups, not someone who'd just flown in. And there had been a couple of people that had come in overnight that hadn't gone out with us that night. There'd only been the five of us. And so then I wanted to bring that in. I wanted to bring that you've missed the first bit in, which I don't think was a problem for our group at all, especially as a couple of the people that arrived late were the most gregarious in the group. But I wanted to use it to just put a little bit of a shift tilt. And obviously, Penny being a detective, she is constantly looking for things. So I'm using her natural suspicion and seeing it from a different angle from what I experienced in order to make the book be what it is for this. So I'm not actually going to read it from the book, I'm just going to tell you the story. We went out in Nequin to this bar, which I describe in the book, and we've got a beautiful plate of charcuterie and we went in to pick our wines, and the walls were just coated in racks and racks and racks of wines. And you picked which ones you wanted, and they took them out to the table. So, because I'm a celiac and gluten free, the other three girls went and sat at the table, and he took the wine out to them. And myself and James went to the charcuterie counter where you picked what you wanted on your charcuterie, so that we could make sure that it was gluten free for me. I mean, most of it is because it's, meats and cheeses and whatever, but there were a couple that they weren't gluten free. So we were stood there. Anyway, when we came out, we'd ordered. They were quite happy with red wine, and I can't drink white wine. I can only drink red. Plus, you're in Argentina. It's got to be Malbec. So we did. We got a bottle of Merlot and a bottle of Malbec, and both from the Patagonian region in Argentina, because that's where we were going. That's where we were in Nequin, and we wanted to have the genuine, experience the genuine stuff. So we had ordered one of each. We'd gone to the charcuterie. Took a while to get there, get that sorted. Came out, and I'm like, "Where's the wine?" And it's in 2 ice buckets with ice. And I always hated that when I went to Spain. If they ever gave you cold red wine, it just doesn't work for me. It really, really doesn't. And there was a whole joke about, I said, take them out of there, I can't drink it out of there. And that became a sort of a bit of a joke, because I don't know whether they didn't mind that or they were quite happy drinking cold red wine. But that became a bit of a joke, and I used that in the book for them all to have got a message where somebody made a crack about cold wine, and they put it on their WhatsApp chat, and Penny picks it up, as does Anique and Thomas, who hadn't been there, and feel a bit out of it. But then I use one of the characters to be a little bit nasty about it for one of the characters who was there, which sort of tilts the relationship that's starting to build between them all, to put one of the insiders, if you like, on the outside with Penny and Anique and Thomas. But then Penny harms the vibe and makes everyone laugh, and so it all comes back in, and that's the only time that I use that. But it was wonderful, that Saturday night in Nequin, and the bus ride, because the bus ride from Nequin to where we were going was 7 hours. We stopped 3 times, I think, at like little service stations where we could grab breakfast, we could grab lunch, and water, drinks, coffees, etc. And we do go through that journey because I want somebody to join later and things to happen along the way. But there is 7 hours, and it's when you get to 5 hours you lose your signal. And I do describe that in the book too. So I'll pick that up in a future episode. So that's it for now. But remember, the novel that this is based on is out Saturday. I would love for everybody to buy it, read it, and if you love it, please, please, please leave a review. Please like my podcast, and please keep listening. Thank you so much to everybody who buys my books, reads my books, and I really hope you enjoy this one when it comes out on Saturday as much as you've enjoyed any of the others. Bye.